I'm Carrie. This is Student Loan Chit-Chat. Thank you for so much for joining me. Today is Sunday, September 17th. This video is actually only a few months old. It relates to the Supreme Court saying that, overruling affirmative action, basically in the colleges, saying that universities do no longer have to use affirmative action as part of their criteria, I guess, for admitting students. So basically, affirmative action has been turned over. This story ran on ABC shortly after that happened. The reason I am reacting to this video is, well, one, of course, it deals with a man who's $150,000 in student loan debt. But I also, even almost as equally important, is, as you'll see in the interview, which is about 5 minutes long, minus my commentary. I will make sure to link the interview in the description box so you can play the entire thing straight through. But basically, this man is giving his thoughts on what he feels, basically on how he feels affirmative action, the overturning of the Supreme Court decision, is going to affect him, and basically how he feels being a black male owing $150,000 in student loan debt. I've only watched this video, I watched it once when it initially came out and was not going to do a reaction on it, but then decided, heck, you know what, I have a few things I'd like to say. For a little bit of context for my viewers, I am Vietnamese black, I am 56 years old, my student loan was forgiven in August 2022 of $110,000. So that kind of gives you a little bit of context as to where I'm coming from. I was born in Saigon, and I was raised by very highly educated white parents. I was raised in Eugene, Oregon, a very white town. And it's important that I give you that context because it will influence, undoubtedly, how I react to this video. Enjoy. All right, let's go ahead and play it. Here we go.
You heard today's ruling. I mean, how does this decision personally affect you?
Well, as someone, Alex, with significant student loan debt, over $150,000 in student loan debt, I was looking for this lifeline, quite frankly. I work every day.
I think him referring to a $10,000, $20,000 student loan debt as a lifeline when you owe $150,000. I remember thinking myself with my $110,000 before it was forgiven. I remember thinking $10,000 isn't going to do a whole lot. Maybe hold me over for a couple months interest. And the fact that he's saying that this is a lifeline is kind of leading me to think that this was supposed to be given to him, and he had never considered that it would not be handed to him. But $10,000, $20,000 when you owe $150,000, that's not a lifeline. I don't even think it's a life preserver.
Hey, but you know, with the economic conditions, with inflation, it was something that I looked forward to. You know, I've worked in the public sector. I've tried to get the public service loan forgiveness, and quite frankly, you know, higher education is just too expensive. And so, you know, it's a bill that I've considered now a bill for life. And that.
Okay, the fact that he's considering this a bill for life. This is what happens, student loan borrowers, when we don't think in advance about the debt we're taking out in relation to the amount of money that our career can earn in relation to what we are actually capable of. We may major in something and say, oh, but the top dollar for this career sits up here. But the question is, can you get there? Can you get to that top dollar amount?
That shouldn't be the case.
Well, and look, I mean, this also comes on the heels of that affirmative action decision. I'm curious, I mean, do you think that race played a role in your admission as an undergrad or as you were working towards your MBA?
Alex, I've gone to 3 predominantly white institutions, and most of them had small populations of students of color.
Okay, so you got to 3 predominantly white institutions, most of them with few students of color. So have I. And I never sat and reveled in the race issue. Now, maybe that's just because my parents were white and we really didn't discuss race that much. It's not like we sat around the table discussing how I was going to be disadvantaged because of my race. We did talk about how one might be disadvantaged if you didn't go to school, okay? But I don't really remember sitting around the table, other than maybe a couple discussions of don't let people calling you names get you down. But did we sit and have these heartfelt discussions to think deeply about whether or not my skin color was going to hold me back? No.
Especially Black people. So I'd be crazy not to think that it played a factor, and in many cases.
How about trying to think that maybe your decisions that you made in how much you took out in student loans is what played the factor? Nobody, because of race, told me that I had to take out a $110,000 student loan. Nobody, because of race, told me that I had to become a teacher. Nobody, because of race, told me I had to go to 3 different universities. Those were all personal decisions absent of race. Race never even became a factor. And I think what annoys me is when I see interviews like this. And again, I'm not saying that race doesn't, when you look at the statistics and you look at numbers, yes, okay, so Black people overall tend to have lower incomes, they have lower education due to American history and all of that. But let's put those numbers away for a second. Let's look at our own individual piece of the pie. Okay, my own personal life, his own personal life. He's in $150,000 worth of debt, not because he's a Black man who went to a predominantly white school. Because what would he say if he had gone to a predominantly Black school? Okay, a historically Black college, HBCU. Okay, what would he say then? Because I can pretty much guarantee you he would have taken out the same amount of debt, if not more. So then who would he blame? So you can't sit and say that, it's great that you got these 3 degrees from prestigious universities, but then at the same time flip the card and say, but they're the ones to blame as to why I'm in all this debt. You could have just gone to one school and called it a day. So could I.
Those obstacles would have been there if we didn't have an affirmative action policy in place. This is devastating. I got a little brother, I got a little sister, who all want to go to college and be in college. And, we know that education is the key economic driver for opportunity.
I think we can take away some of the hyperbole of this is devastating, this was going to be my lifeline. Okay, I think we come down off some of the drama queen stuff.
And so, my mom's an educator. We all love higher education in college, and it's unfortunate that it's not only cost prohibitive, but now race can play a role in whether you'll be admitted into it.
Of course race can play a role in it, because that's what you're looking at. If that's what you want to see, that's all you're going to see. Okay? And here's the issue I have with this particular McGee gentleman. He and I were both raised in very educated families, okay? PhD, master degrees, and all of that stuff, okay? He is not a victim of somebody who was raised in the projects, whose parents flunked out of, I won't say flunked, okay, but whose parents, maybe didn't get a high school diploma, who has never had guidance as to how the collegiate world works. No, by his own admission, his whole family is lined up in education, just like mine is. So now whose fault is it? He was not denied an opportunity of education to know about it because of his race. By his own admission, his whole family is lined up in it. That'd be like me sitting there going, man, I got $110,000 student debt because I'm Black. Really? I don't remember that being part of the application process. What I remember was, do you want to go to this school, sign here? And yeah, and I did it 3 times over, and he did it 3 times over. Well, I didn't do it 3 times over. My bachelor's degree, I didn't have any debt. It was my 2 master degrees once I hit my 30s. So by his own admission, he is not the statistical Black male that he can blame the system on. Okay? He came from an educated family. These were strictly his personal decisions and perhaps some ego.
A university of your choice.
Switching gears back to the student loan relief, what's your payment strategy going forward to pay off this debt?
That's a great question, Alex. I think for me, of course, trying to budget and figure out how to implement this new bill, because we've been having relief for the last 2 years. Thinking about investment strategies.
This is what we should be thinking about before we get into student loan debt. How are we going to budget? How are we going to pay off the bills? Like so many people of all ages, okay, from the 17, 18-year-old all the way up through the 50s and even 60s. We get our degrees on a hope and a prayer and a wing that the income we're going to earn is going to pay it off, but we don't do the math first. That's like saying, put me in a Lexus, okay, and then deciding afterwards how I'm going to pay for it. I would never do that. I would have it completely mapped out. Okay, here's the car. How many, what's the Kelley Blue Book value? How many miles does this car have? We spend more time figuring out how to get a good deal on our vehicles. We spend more time, I know I do, figuring out the per ounce of orange juice. I mean, good God, I can tell you the, Minute Maid orange juice is sold at 16 cents an ounce. But if I go to, Ocean Spray, they go up to 26 cents an ounce. But ask me how much my student loan debt was, as I went through college. I couldn't tell you. And the other mistake we made is we base it only on the monthly payment. Because, when you're sitting there in the financial aid office, and I remember asking, okay, well, how much is it going to be? Oh, you'll be about $275 a month. Well, that sounds good. I'm all good. Sign me up. I didn't realize that was off of, $110,000 bill, and the $275 won't even cover, interest.
Started to think about ways that I can put money in the stock market and 401ks and high interest accounts, and maybe try to use that interest to bring it down. But the fact of the matter is Alex, when you owe as much as I do, the interest alone is just going to continue to keep you in debt, right? And
I've discussed that on this channel, and I will continue to hammer this home. Those of you who are going on the income-based payment, and you're breathing a huge sigh of relief because you can, quote unquote, afford it. No, you can only afford it if you want to take it home with you till the day you die. Okay? If you want to get out of debt in 10 years, 5 years, even 20 years, you want to get out of debt in the amount of time it takes to raise a kid from 0 to 18. You need to call up your student loan. Yeah, kind of a different way of thinking about it, right? You need to call up your student loan company and say, I want to get out of debt in 10 years. What is the monthly payment going to have to be without fail for me to get out of debt in 10 years? If you call up your student loan company and you say, hey, give me the lowest, cheapest payment plan you can, maybe even make it zero, well, that bill is just going to keep going up, 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 up. There will be no stop to it. And if you are not on public service, when you do get it forgiven after 20, 25, 30 years, and that's of making payments, not putting in deferment, not putting in forbearance, of making payments, then you'll owe the IRS, unless you're on public service.
That impacts whether I can buy a house, whether I can buy a car.
Impacts whether you can get a girlfriend.
And again, it feels like, this burden that is very hard to get rid of, no matter how much money you make, right? So, that's my strategy. I don't know how great it is. But
we should have thought of that strategy just like I should have before we went to school. Do you see, none of this is a math issue. This is about math. In his case, in my case, it's about math. It's not because we were naive to the fact that college is expensive and costs money. It's about the math. We are so excited to go and get that degree, to get that dream education, whatever it is that we wanted, that we forgot about the math. But we are not victims. He is not a victim. I was not a victim. Okay? We are not victims. Some people are. Okay? And the problem I have with him is he's taking the, I don't mean this to sound kind of, strange or, but he's taking a victim spot. He is taking up a spot where a victim, a true victim, should be sitting in. I hope this makes sense. There are people, yes, who are black, okay, who are truly, truly victims, first generation, no one to guide them. They're sent to a school that they saw every, 3 o'clock in the afternoon when they were unemployed, telling them to go here, call this counselor. They get into a crooked school, okay? Those are victims. He is taking their spot, and he shouldn't be doing that. He's not a victim.
But, of course, also looking at my employer and trying to figure out if there's any options there.
Yeah. Well, and Jonathan, I mean, you highlighted this earlier. I mean, you come from a family of educators. I mean, you've got siblings. But, I mean, how important is education to you? And, I mean, do you think the education's worth the cost?
The education is very valuable. It's the reason why I've seen the success that I've seen today. We know.
It's why you've seen the success you've seen today, and this is why you're on a news program talking about how you are carrying this $150,000 ball and chain that's just going to keep increasing over the years, and how you pretty much plan to die with it. I know you didn't say you plan to die with it, but is this success? Really? Blaming the fact that, you're a black male trying to get through the education system? even though you've been given opportunities that people would absolutely love to have, but you took those opportunities and you used it, in all honesty, irresponsibly? Is this really success? It's almost like he can't make up his mind. Is he successful or not? I don't know. I don't think, I mean, book smart, sure. But is that what you were striving for? Or did you want the finances to go with it? I'm assuming you wanted the financials to go with it. So is it really success? I hope my computer screen's not dying here. Hold on. Hopefully you can't see it. I can see it on my end.
No, as Black people in America, you already have significant barriers, and education is the way to break those barriers. And for me, it's very tough to see an environment where, I could be successful economically, socially, and professionally if I did not get a chance to go to Loyola and get my MBA in business. If I didn't get
So he's trying to convince himself that even though he's $150,000 in debt, he's trying to convince that he's successful. That's what it sounds like to me.
a chance to go to Washington and get my degree at George Washington. And quite frankly, I found my passion at Western Illinois University 4 hours
So 2 out of the 3 schools, so something like 65% of the education he got wasn't even relevant.
outside of Chicago. So it played a huge role in my success. And it's unfortunate that other young men of color like me are going to have to face additional barriers as a result of this ruling. It's unfortunate. It's devastating.
The hyperbole, okay? Lifeline, devastating. Come on.
And I think we need an act of Congress, quite frankly.
We need less of an act of Congress, and we need more people to take responsibility in understanding beforehand what their financial obligations are going to be towards debt. We need less of an act of Congress, and we need more people to be less mesmerized with the sports program, the on-campus Starbucks, and all the, Wi-Fi locations of a school. And we need them to focus on, what is it that you're ultimately really going for, and to stick to that in the most cost-effective way. That's what we need, myself included.
Well, Jonathan, I appreciate you taking time to share your experience with us today.
Thank you so much, Alan.
All right, I'll be right back.
Hi, everyone. George.
It's interesting to note that this interview has received, McGee's interview on ABC has received more than 51,000 views in the last couple of months, yet it's only received 358 thumbs up. And I think it's because it strikes a nerve with people. And I think part of it, and I really do believe this is not someone who can play victim. Okay? Yes, certain races, the black race in the United States has historically had more difficulty getting into, colleges and universities, that are good with, a solid reputation and all that. But, the certain people are victims in that sense. But this particular person, McGee, he is not a victim. Okay? He simply made choices that I suspect was, and I won't say in full, but I will definitely say in part, he was partly ego driven to get all these degrees. He saw himself as, hey, I'm really book smart. Okay, and I can go from school to school to school. I can go to, elite schools and all of that stuff. And, I can, supposedly, I don't know what his grades are, but I'm assuming he did very well in them and stuff, I'm really book smart. That's not a race thing. Okay? And taking it and then gathering up all the debt and then claiming, well, the Supreme Court just, if they hadn't overturned, the affirmative action and make it harder for everybody else, but at the same time he's going, but my family was all educated. He knew his way around the collegiate system. I knew my way around the collegiate system. Okay, I've been on a college campus hanging out since, probably about the age of 8. Okay, so I think what rubbed people the wrong way really is this was not a guy who's a victim of the system. This is a guy who was just he failed to plan. He failed to have a strategy, just like so many of us in student loan debt. And this is why, before we take on these loans, we can't just look at the top of the pay scale, okay? Because it's my belief that only a few people are ever going to reach the top. We need to look at what does the average person make in that field, okay? And we have to look at, if I go for this additional money, what's it going to cost me? What's it going to cost me in relationships in my personal life, in my professional life, in my time? And, you know, at $150,000, I mean, that's a lot. I know at 110, I was looking at retiring with it. And I remember thinking, sure, that the education was valuable. Absolutely. You know, I enjoyed my time there. I mean, school is hard work, but, overall, it was like, fine. Okay. But I never really did stop to look at the math. And that's a math issue. It's not a race issue. And we can't settle and say, well, minorities are in debt because of their race. We can't do that, because once we do that, then it is my belief that we then take away the personal responsibility factor. And again, this is not to say that there are victims of predatory loans and predatory lenders out there who go into poor, maybe black communities, okay? But it happens to white communities too. There are poor white communities. There are people, going to school and they're white and they don't have parents that have generations of education behind them. We need to stop looking so much of it as a race factor. And we need to start looking at it as a math factor. And we need to start looking at it, in my opinion, as what can we do to educate people about college debt. Perhaps we should start being more aggressive about that in high school. But in this particular case, in this particular interview, he's not a victim because of his skin color. But instead, I suspect it was more of ego and lack of planning. I'm Carrie. This is Student Loan Chit-Chat. I hope you will consider subscribing and have a great day.